and welcome to another episode of The Captioned Life, a podcast about how comics and pop culture impact life and society, and vice versa. Coming to you from deep in the heart of Texas, my name is Kevin, and joining me in the virtual Funhouse Zoom room is my good buddy Sean in Indiana.
Hello!
That's super creepy. Before we get started with this episode, please hit the subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, and follow us on social media at Captioned Life on both Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Reddit. You can also find more info about us and our past episodes at thecaptionedlife.com. Today's episode, we wanted to start with a very important milestone. It may not seem like a big deal, but it's a big deal to us. We want to spend a special shout out to all of our listeners because we recently passed the 2,000 downloads mark across all of our podcast networks. So we want to say a special thank you to everyone who is listening and to those who come back for more every month.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. We love it. It's a huge deal.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun to do. And I know that our audience isn't big, but I hope that they're loyal. And I hope that they're telling their friends about it, because I don't expect that we would ever get rich off of this, but it is cool to put something out there that connects with people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's why we started the podcast, is that we just want to share our interests and just take everybody along for the ride and have that discussion, which we've been enjoying, growing from doing this in our, closets in our house when we first started. Right. And now we're, growing a lot more with listeners and with plays, and we're doing more social media stuff and videos and things like that. So it's been a lot of fun, and I'm just really glad that everybody has been enjoying what we've been putting out there, and just great listening to people, what they have to say about all the things that we're talking about. So it's always like a discussion that we're having, not just between you and me and our guests, but with everybody that's listening too. So it's been a blast, and we really want to thank everybody for supporting us on that.
Thank you. Yes, the Captioned Life universe is always expanding, and we say thank you. If this is your first episode, if you just found us, go back to thecaptionedlife.com, find one of the older episodes. We've got 24 great episodes. No, 3 dozen. This is episode 36. We have 3 dozen. Okay, so there are 36 episodes. We probably have at least 2 dozen that are good. Okay,
right.
Like if we're batting 666, we're doing 2/3, which that's a Hall of Fame. So
right,
but so thank you everybody for listening.
Yes, thank you. Real quick, before we get into our episode about Universal in Orlando, I do want to give a shout out to somebody that met down there. This person, Jesus, works at Sapphire Falls in the cafe there. I think it's called the New Dutch Trading Company. And I was wearing a Batman shirt. Actually, I think it was this one at the time. I was wearing a Batman shirt.
Because we're dorks, and you probably have more than one Batman shirt.
I know that's what the sad thing is. Like, I always have to think like which Batman shirt or what Superman shirt was I wearing that day. I'm pretty sure it was this one, because he saw it, and he and I were both talking about that day. That's when the director of the Flash movie that's coming out released a picture of the 1992 Michael Keaton Batman symbol with the little blood splatter on there. It's supposed to be really reminiscent of Watchmen. And so he had just released that picture. So he saw this, and so when we started talking about it, we had a really good conversation. And I told him about our podcast, and he was really interested. So I told him that we would give him a shout out, because of that interest and everything. And so we just want to say thank you for, talking to me about that and for listening to ourselves. So, and he was really great. He was, really friendly and approachable, and it was really great to talk to that whole week. So thank you very much, Jesus.
Yeah. Thank you, Jesus. So Sean mentioned what we're going to talk about on this episode, and we're going to discuss our vacation to Universal Studios. So full disclosure, if you haven't listened and you don't know our story, Sean and I met on Twitter a few years ago, and we've been doing the podcast now for 2 years. We had never actually met up until 2 weeks ago at the beginning of June, and it just so happened that we ended up planning separate trips to Universal Studios in Orlando, separate from each other, but somehow it managed to overlap so that we could actually get a chance to hang out.
Right.
And we tried to coordinate some time that we could spend together, our families could spend together. And I want to tell the story of how we met physically the first time.
That sounds so bad.
I know, right?
How we met physically.
Well, like in person, how we met in person. It was very physical.
That's better.
because Sean was waiting in line to fill up his Coke Freestyle cup. Yep. And I saw him standing there above the crowd because he's 6'6", and I nonchalantly walked up and fully embraced him from behind, like two friends, like two friends who had known each other their whole lives. And he was
nonchalantly, like I felt like you ran up to me and gave me a
hug.
hug.
Trying to sneak up behind you so that you didn't notice me, but I was a very carefree attitude.
Right, yeah.
And Sean was probably freaked out a little bit about like, who is this? But you probably had a guess, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, It wasn't Riley, that's for sure.
I'm not a tall man, but I'm taller than Riley.
Right.
So yeah, we were at Universal Studios, and we thought, that this is not something that we normally talk about, but it's in the realm of the things that we're interested in, and pop culture, and we thought we wanted to do a podcast where we talk a little bit about our experience there. And Sean and I are both theme park people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm a Disney aficionado, and so is Sean.
Mm-hmm.
And we've both made separate trips to Disney World in the past, and we might plan a joint one in the future.
Yes,
because we did have a really good time hanging out.
We did, and our families got along really well too. Like our kids became instant best friends, right?
Best buddies, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yes, right. Riley loved Madden and Caroline so much that we were at the Spider-Man ride, and he wanted to give them the best buddies dog tag and have one for himself. So we went ahead and bought that, and that was like the first day, same day that we met each other. So,
which coincidentally, Madden has worn his best buddy dog tag ever since, and it's been about 2 weeks now. And the best buddy part has worn off. Like, I'm a little bit disappointed with, but I'm not surprised. But like that just goes to show you that it really mattered to him.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll make sure to tell Riley that.
So I actually found out about like the deal that we got to go to Universal from you. And they don't offer this deal anymore, but at the time they were offering a season pass option that allowed you to go for 15 months instead of 12.
Right.
And so we both jumped on this. I actually talked my wife into it after you talked me into it. And then we ended up talking nearly her entire family into joining us, which I will admit had its ups and downs. It's really hard to plan a vacation for a group of 12 people.
Yeah.
But we had a really good time. And I kind of just want to kickstart this conversation about Universal with what draws me to theme parks like this.
Right.
I think that there's a lot of discussion amongst theme park fans about the use of intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Disney groups are split on whether or not they should be retheming rides to update, to link to with current movies and stuff.
Right.
But one of the things that I really like at Universal is, they don't make any bones about it. Their slogan actually used to be, come to Universal and ride the movies.
Right.
And they have some really great intellectual property that they offer there. And every park does. I mean, Disney has its built-in stuff. What is it? Six Flags has all the DC characters. They have a lot of roller coasters that are based on DC characters and things like that.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, Knott's Berry Farms in California has the Peanuts gang.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, and then at SeaWorld they have Sesame Street.
No kidding.
Yeah, you can go and meet Elmo at SeaWorld. Thankfully, that's not it. Like my kids are a little bit older now for that. Like, so that's not a draw for them. They would rather go and see the other characters.
Right.
But the rides at Universal are all built around the movie experience.
Right.
And for somebody like me who is a big fan of movies, this is the draw. It's going and experiencing something that is like the film like, or like in the same realm, but different and unique and more interactive.
Right.
And then, Disney World does a great job with some of the things that they're coming out with now. They have the Tron coaster coming, and they have the Guardians of the Galaxy ride that seem like they're really, really cool. And they'll probably be, at the top of our must-do list the next time we go. But there are a lot of things at Universal that I really, really liked. And it's because it gives you like that satisfaction of like sitting in the theater and experiencing something on the screen for the first time, but in a really, really unique and more immersive way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting because, as you were talking about with like the new rides that they're coming out with at Disney and Universal with, specifically with Hagrid's Fantastic Beast motorbike ride and their new one, Velocicoaster, which Sarah and I was able to go ride on. I don't know if you all got to ride on.
No, we didn't get a chance to ride it.
Right. Yeah. It seems like the new thing that they're doing with roller coasters is trying to make it not a roller coaster. And what I mean by that is, the traditional roller coaster is in a box where you sit down. It's almost like you're in a car without a hood, basically, right? And that's like the traditional roller coaster. But with something like Hagrid's motorbike, you are strapped into a motorbike or the carriage right next to it. Velocicoaster is interesting because it's a roller coaster that goes upside down, but you're just sitting on a seat, and then there's an overhead lap belt that goes under, but there's not a shoulder belt. And so even though you're going upside down, there's nothing that's really holding you from the shoulders, but you feel a lot more free when you're going upside down and doing all the twists and stuff like that, because it almost feels like you're not being held down by anything, basically, because you're not in that traditional coaster. And Disney's doing the same thing with Tron and with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, I think a lot of those, they're trying to coin the term story coaster. Yes. Something that is exciting and is a thrill ride, but is more immersive, like the dark rides of yesteryear are.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it's just interesting to see as they're building new rides, they're really thinking about how to make it more different than what they've been doing, not just with the story or the intellectual property, but just with the coaster itself, and make it feel like it's a lot more immersive that way. So, yeah.
All right. So we got a couple of bullet points we want to run through real quick. And I'm going to start with asking you, Sean, this, and we'll both talk about it. Let's talk about your resort. What did you like and dislike about your resort?
Yeah. So we stayed at Sapphire Falls, and one of the draws for that is, one, we had a really good deal on it. I mean, Sarah does all of our travel planning and gets all the deals and everything, and she got a really good deal with us getting that. And one of the things I really liked about it is that it was really close to the park, that it allowed you to either take a water taxi to the park, which was really nice. I mean, it's different than getting on a bus that's closed off and everything, and then you're, kind of pinned up against people right next to you. The water taxi was a little bit more open and was only about a 5-minute ride. Or if the boat was running behind, or if it got full, like you could walk there, and it was about a 10 to 12-minute walk. It's longer if you follow the signs that Universal put up to tell you how to get to the hotel, because I did that one time, and it took me twice as long to follow the signs that they give you than it does if I just kind of took the path right next to the river where the water taxi goes through. So if I just stick with the river, I pretty much got there in about 10-minute walk, whereas the signs pretty much takes you in a really long direction, and it takes you back to the front of the hotel, whereas the water taxi entrance is at the back of it. So I think that was a big part, the big perk. The rooms were nice, but the couple of things that I was not a fan of were three things mainly. One, the dining options were not great. They had, let me think. They had, I think, two. They had a formal dining place that we never actually tried out, but it just seemed a little bit formal. They had a bar that you could go in with a family and get like, not even pub food, just appetizers. Mm-hmm. And then they had like a small little store where you can get like snacks and stuff like that. But it just seemed like it wasn't really a great option for dining. The other issue I had was the Wi-Fi. When we set up the Wi-Fi, like in most hotels, they usually let you, sign up with the Wi-Fi for free, and that's part of the perk of being there. But when we signed up for the Wi-Fi at the hotel, it was two options. There was a freemium option. The free option is that you could have 5 devices connected, and they said it wasn't ideal for streaming movies, or you could pay like $8 a day, and you could have up to 8 devices connected, and it was ideal for streaming. So we didn't want to pay for it. So we connected to the free Wi-Fi, and it actually did fine with streaming the movies. And so that was a big deal. But the deal of it was that once you connected your devices, those were like the only devices you could use. Otherwise, if you're adding a 6th one on there, then you have to kick them off. So for us, we had me, my wife, Riley, and then our friend Sarah, who were all there. And so if you think about like each one of us have our own devices, but then like I had an iPad in addition to my phone, and then also computers because we're still working. And so we had easily more than 8 devices. So I didn't like the fact that they were trying to upcharge you for internet when like most places is pretty much free. The last thing I'm going to have an issue with is that they do not provide a microwave at all in the hotel, like not in the room or in the lobby. So if you wanted a microwave, you had to pay $15 a night to have them install it in your room. And so I felt like that was just a really like cheap way to upcharge. And because like if you had leftovers, you want to warm them up and eat them later, but because they took away the microwave, you either have to pay $15, which is essentially a meal, to use it per night, or you just got rid of your leftovers and you got something else to eat. So yeah, so I wasn't. It was okay. I wasn't thrilled with it. I don't know if I would stay back there again or not. I'm still kind of on the fence on it, but I wasn't really terribly impressed by it. So,
yeah, I know the name of the game with the upcharge thing for sure, because I think a lot of the resorts, especially ones that are attached to destination like theme parks like Universal and Disney, that is their MO. We stayed across the street from Sean at the Cabana Bay Beach Resort, which we really loved. We picked that because it was the place where the rest of our group was going to be able to get into. And it worked out really, really well because they have a lot of amenities that were really great. On the flip side of Sean's complaint, we had a Starbucks in the lobby, and then there was also a kind of like choose your options food court. The place, there was a deli for sandwiches, and then there was a place for pizza and a place for burgers and things like that.
Right.
And it was resort price, so it was a little bit expensive, but it was for if you've done trips like this before, it was a decent value. And I will say that there were a lot of options that were really, really good. Especially at breakfast. I like breakfast.
Oh yeah, your guys' breakfast option was great.
On the flip side, okay, so the other plus for me is the 2 pools that they offer at the Cabana Bay Beach Resort. They have one pool that has a lazy river, which the lazy river was really, really cool. But it was also really, really cold.
Right. Yeah.
Because every time that Sean and I would try to go through the lazy river, we would make it like a lap or 2 and be like, no, this is too cold.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that the one thing that I dislike, well, I didn't have a microwave in my room either, but at Cabana Bay, they offer a family style suite that has a larger refrigerator and a microwave in it. That wasn't an option when we booked this. The thing that I disliked the most about it was how big the resort is. The Cabana Bay Beach Resort is enormous.
Right.
It is set up kind of like a mid-century, like late 50s, early 60s, like Miami Beach motif, and it's very cool. It's very visually striking, but it is like it's a walk and a half from where we were at the end of the property back to like the bus stop or the main lobby and things like that. So there were pluses and minuses. I would say, but I would definitely say that I would go back. And actually, we've already booked a trip in September to be able to take advantage of our season pass, and we're staying at Cabana Beach again. But we're going to stay in one of the family suites where you get to check that out. So
yeah.
Let's talk about the parks themselves, because we probably had some similar experiences with how busy the park was, considering, that we're coming out of a pandemic. But what are some of the things outside of the rides? What are some of the things that you liked and disliked about the actual park?
Yeah. So what I like about the park was that it was a decent size enough to where you had a lot of things, but you could go to both and do both in a single day if you wanted to, So I think that was a really strong point for them. And one thing I like that they do is they offer popcorn and drinks that you can refill. And so you pay like a fee up front to where you purchase the cup for like $10. And then after that you get unlimited drinks, and then you just reactivate it, I think, for like $3 or $5 or something like that every day. And then you get all the unlimited drinks that you want. They do the same thing with popcorn as well too. The one thing I experienced I didn't like, that I think is a fault that hopefully is not going to stay for very long, but I think it's just because of the situation that we're in, is that just like what you were saying earlier, it was very crowded. And part of the reason why things felt so long when it was crowded is that when you go to like food places specifically, is that the lines were really long and it took forever to get things. And come to find out, it seemed like they opened up the capacity, but didn't have the staff to really match with it as well too, because when we're waiting in line to get drinks, it took them forever. There were some places that weren't open when the park was open or closed, 2 or 3 hours earlier. And their fountain drinks, the freestyle drinks that you're able to fill up the cups with, most of the time it was either it didn't have ice. It didn't have the, like most of the drinks that we wanted, like, cause Sarah and I only drink a couple of drinks, but it would be out of a lot of drinks. So not just the ones that we wanted, but you look at the screen and there's probably a quarter of the drinks that was available that they had listed. And that wasn't at just one machine. It was like 75% of the machines that we went to was always like that. And so it was very frustrating. That would be my biggest knock for the experience that we had within the park. Right. And you mentioned them like raising capacity, and I think that's a misnomer, and I want to call Universal out on it a little bit. But here's the deal. Even though they say they're raising capacity just means it's the most people that the park can handle. Most of the parks in Central Florida like that don't reach capacity, with the exception of certain days of the year. Christmas Day, New Year's Day. Like there are really, really busy days of the year that they reach capacity. But other than that, capacity, the notion of capacity only matters when it's fully maxed out or when it's severely limited, when they were doing 25 and 35% of capacity. Right. What I think we experienced was a regular June day. Right. Or maybe even slightly busier because people had been like, if we can finally go out and do things, and they're going to the parks and they're taking trips. But we experienced a regular to busy June day that they weren't ready for. Right. And there were a number of like food locations that were either not open or they were working at like limited capacity. There were a number of places like the stands, like either a popcorn stand or a snack stand within the park that were just empty. You walk past several of them to find one that was working. And then for what it costs to do the Coke Freestyle refill cups, they were just so they were overwhelmed with the number of people that were in line. They couldn't keep up with demand. Right. Right.
And so at a little bit, you felt like by investing that money, you didn't get your money's worth out of it.
Right.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, one thing I will say in somewhat defense of that is that when we got back home, Sarah had said that she went to like a Facebook group that she was a part of, and she saw that people had posted the same thing, and someone had said that it was actually more of a Coca-Cola issue than it was Universal, that Coca-Cola's had been having trouble, like, I guess, shipping out their products and stuff like that, which we understand to a certain extent. But at that point, it's like, but if you're still charging full price and you know that you're not getting the products coming in that should be, like, you should either reduce it or put on hold or something like that. But you shouldn't charge people full price when you know that there's going to be an issue with giving people options the way that they usually have. So,
right.
Yeah. My 2 cents on that.
And I will say that, like, in defense of, like, the situation, well, not in defense of the situation, but as an addendum, the food was actually really good. Some of the better theme park food that I've ever had. I know that there was a day where we had ridden the Popeye and Bluto's Bilge Rat barge, which if you've ever ridden that, you get completely soaked. There's no way.
Definitely, yeah.
It's like Thanos. It's inevitable. Okay. Yeah.
Destiny has arrived.
But afterwards, we got in line to get a Blimpy burger or Wimpy burger. Wimpy burger.
Yes, Wimpy burger.
Because it's Popeye themed. Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, that the Wimpy burger was one of the best hamburgers I've ever had, especially inside of a cheese park. Now, it may have been that it was hot and we were really hungry, and you just get to that place where you're like, oh my gosh, this is really good. But no, right. the burger and the curly fries there at the Wimpy burger were top notch. And they have a lot of like fine dining establishments. My family and I went to Toothsome, the Chocolate Emporium there, which is a really cool steampunk looking building there in the City Walk. And the food was excellent. And the dessert was even better. So there's I'm not gonna complain about the products, what they were offering. It's just, it seemed that everybody was really, really understaffed.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I'll agree with you on that too. It seems like the food at Universal for compared to the other theme parks that we've been to, like Disney, they definitely have the upper hand on that, because I feel like, especially Disney, which is really surprising. I know that their food tends to be pretty similar, whether you get it in like whatever park you're at or even in the resort. But with Universal, I like is that there was just a lot of like fresh options that were like really diverse. And the quality seemed like it was actually higher than what you typically see in the theme park as well too. So, I agree with that. I think their food, in terms of quality and everything, is really superb on their end. So,
okay, so here's the meat and potatoes. This is what the people want to know.
Yeah,
let's talk about our favorite and least favorite rides.
Yes.
I will say that I didn't get a chance to ride everything. I rode a lot of it, but I did experience some issues with my size and not being able to ride some of the rides. So if you find yourself in a similar situation, that's something that you can be aware of. For the most part, I find that the rides at Universal were a lot more restrictive in the space than similar rides at Disney World. And I know that the rides at Universal are touted a little bit more as thrill rides, but some of the things I didn't fit in were not related to like my gut, of which I mean obviously I have one, but like my legs and hips didn't fit. It didn't fit either. And I would venture to say that I could lose 50 to 65 pounds and they still might not, because that's just the way that I'm shaped. Right. So I'll have to put an asterisk on some of these, but I did have a really good time riding them. I think my favorite, I'll say my favorite thing about riding the rides, at Universal was my daughter Caroline's reaction to all of them, because especially the ones that are 3D, she just loved all of them.
Right.
But I think my favorite of those is the Transformers ride. And there are several rides there that kind of operate on the same platform, the same kind of mechanics and whatnot. The Transformer ride to me is great. It's better than most of the Transformer films, like the story and the backstory.
Right.
Because I like Transformers 1 and I like Transformers 3, but everything else I guess Bumblebee's pretty good, the movie, but everything else is garbage. They're just overinflated fireworks shows, and they don't have a lot of substance in them. But there's a good story that comes with the Transformers ride. It mimics actually being inside of a Transformer.
Yeah.
And the 3D and the practical effects used in the ride are really, really great. It's a very, very immersive experience. So that'll be my favorite pick. What would be yours?
Well, I want to comment on your Transformer ride, and I'll say that I actually wasn't really impressed with Transformer. And I'll share this, is that I remember we were trying to tell Riley what the Transformer ride was like, because he asked what was it like? And I was like, oh, you've been on it before. And he's like, yeah, but I can't remember. And then I looked at Sarah, I was like, I can't remember what it was like either, so it wasn't memorable for us. And then when we rode it again, we remembered why it wasn't memorable is because it was pretty much cookie cutter of the Spider-Man ride that's in Marvel Island. It's like even the cars were pretty much operate the same way.
It's also very similar to the Escape from Green Gots. It uses a very similar structure and car.
Yeah, it does. But I mean, Green Gots still has a lot more variety and different kind of experience.
It's ramped up a notch.
Right. A lot. Whereas I feel like you can go on Transformers and Spider-Man. It's pretty much the same ride, just different story.
I will admit that Green Gots was one of the rides that I actually sat down, but I didn't fit. So I was asked to get off. So,
well, and it's just
and I was disappointed because I love Harry Potter, but
I know. Yeah. Well, it's now I know whenever they're making new roller coasters, I will appreciate, because I'm the same way as well too, because of my size being so tall, that there's some rides I just can't ride. Either it doesn't click down far enough, or it's just not comfortable. But I know with the new rides, what I specifically appreciate is that the older ones tend to have one lap bar for the whole row of people. Now they're doing it for individual seats, which makes it a lot more, I feel safer, because when I'm sitting next to Riley on a ride and we're using the lap belt, because I'm such a bigger guy, he still has about 8 inches of space between him and the lap bar. So I'm holding on to him for dear life to make sure he doesn't fly out of the car. But now they have the individual lap belts that they're making. I feel like it does a couple things. One, every person is more secure, but two, it gives you a lot more space to work with if you're a different body type. So yeah. But going back to your question, my favorite ride, honestly, right now at Universal, it's the Velocicoaster, just because it's very different from anything else you've ever experienced. I think it's really, really cool. And it's just a different ride altogether, because it has all the traditional loops and spins and stuff like that. But there are some parts of the ride where you don't even realize you're upside down until 3 seconds in, and you're just oh crap, and it goes really fast. Just any of the other theme parks, Universal did a good job of setting up the environment to be a lot more immersive. And what's really cool is when you first take off, it looks like the Velociraptors are right next to you, because they have built-in screens to make it, run with you they're in a cage or something like that. So, and I would say the movements felt very much like how a Velociraptor would move as well too, so it was really cool how whoever designed this seemed to had an idea of how to make it seem like you're moving the same way the Velociraptor would move as well too. So I thought it was just really neat how they designed all of it, from the entrance all the way through the actual ride experience, and how authentic it seemed in terms of this is a Velociraptor coaster and you felt like you're running like a Velociraptor. So
right. Yeah. I have I didn't get a chance to ride the Velocicoaster. We were there the around the time that they actually did the grand opening. I know you got to ride it when they were doing the soft opening.
Right.
I will say this: we had a very cool experience with the whole opening of the Velocicoaster because
you did.
Universal owns NBC. They had some celebrities there to ride the roller coaster and to do some media stuff. And my kids and I got to meet Kenan Thompson from SNL.
Yes,
which was a really cool experience for my kids. My son Madden recognized him immediately and ran up and asked for a picture, and he was extremely gracious and really sweet.
That's awesome.
To my kids. My daughter Caroline said, "Hey, I watch you on SNL," and I half expected him to be like, "You probably shouldn't," but he was super cool. Right. And the only thing I'll add to all of that is like my honorable mention for my favorite ride is got to be E.T. Because it's a classic dark ride. It's the only thing that's there. That's one of the only rides. It's the only ride there, and one of the only kind of attractions that's there left from when the park opened in 1989, which is over 30 years ago.
Right.
And it's just a really fun experience, especially to share with your kids.
Yeah. But
so
going back to Kenan Thompson real quick, and then I'm going to go back to the E.T. ride. See, if I saw Kenan Thompson, I would have been like, Knuckle Puck time from Mighty Ducks 2, right? Because that was my favorite movie growing up, So it's just funny that they know him from SNL because that's where he's been in. And again, their kids probably shouldn't be watching SNL, right? But, I watch SNL growing up as well, too. I'm not traumatized. But Kenan Thompson, for me, will always be the Knuckle Puck kid from D2, The E.T.
coincidentally enough is like if my kids watch that, they would probably still recognize him and they'd be like, is that Kenan? Because that movie's like 20, 25 years old at this point. And he doesn't look like he's aged at all.
Right.
Like it's insane. Yeah.
And lost a lot of weight since then too. Yeah. I know his face looks pretty much the same.
Pretty much the same.
The ET ride. So I'm glad you brought that up because I always find it very interesting as a ride because again, any ride that's based on a movie, you try to mimic like the experience of what happens in the movie. But that's the one ride where it seemed like they weren't quite sure what else to do to make it a ride because halfway through the ride, all of a sudden you're going through ET's home planet that you never see in the movie.
Nope.
And it looks like it's like somebody, whoever designed it, like halfway through was just like, I'm going to, go on acid real quick.
Yeah. Acid trip.
And that's exactly what it felt like. Cause it was just like a bunch of ETs like swinging from vines and branches, the different like alien types. Like one looked like a gigantic mushroom with the brim is like a mustache basically. It was just the weirdest experience. And like the music was weird and everything. And so it was just like, it almost felt like it was two separate rides that got smashed together and it's just a very odd ride.
But you never got to see the sequel to E.T. in the theater, so it kind of exists as like the continuation that nobody knows about.
That is true. Yeah. So and I mean Riley loves it and he went on the ride before he even saw the movie, so it prompted him to want to watch the movie as well too. But I mean he loves that ride and he doesn't know any better and it's still a lot of fun. It's just I remember Sarah leaning over, she's like, was this in the movie? I was like, not at all.
when you take off above the police cars and you're riding over the like the light up miniature city. Yeah. That's like the best part. Like you feel and you're in a bicycle and you feel like you're flying. It's legit one of the coolest things around.
Right.
What about your least favorite ride there?
Fast and Furious. No hesitation. It's just it's terrible because it's well, I'll say one thing. We took Riley on it without knowing like what it was about at all. And there's scenes where like it was probably not appropriate for a 7-year-old to be watching.
Okay. Yeah.
But it was just a terrible ride because it's like the story wasn't great. The feeling experience wasn't that great. It was way too loud for anyone's comfort. Like Riley was like closing his ears like most of the time. It's just, I feel like it's just one of those rides they just need to retheme and like no one really cares about it. I think it was like really popular when it came out because the movie's popular, But I think even with Fast and Furious 9 coming out,
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. Like, I don't think it's ever been considered good. I think people were disappointed by it when it first came out. And, you know, we were there 2 weeks before Fast and Furious 9 came out. Like, right. I mean, it comes out like this week that we're recording. And there was zero fanfare, like, in regards to the upcoming movie. Like, it's a black eye in Universal Studios history.
Yeah.
The acting on it is so bad. Like the acting in the cut scenes and whatnot, it is so bad, even for like Fast and the Furious standards. It is terrible. Like the I'm sorry. Like, it's constructive criticism. If you ever hear this, please don't come to my house and fight me. Because I'm a big fan of the franchise. I really like the Fast and Furious movies because it's escapism and it's, you know, it's like a modern fantasy. Like it's a fantasy movie that takes place in our grounded reality, because the stuff that they do doesn't make any sense. But the acting in the ride is just so awful.
Yeah.
And it was almost looks like it was directed by like a junior high like theater teacher who's trying to like convince kids teach kids how to overact to sell it on stage. It just it didn't connect. But yeah, I think that ride's been terrible since it came out. One of the rides that I actually really liked, but I was hesitant to ride on because I had heard like bad things about it, was actually the Jimmy Fallon ride.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was like, okay, I got to ride it because I'm a big fan of the show. I watched a lot of the clips on YouTube and things like that. Mm-hmm. But like I'd always heard, like, no, don't waste your time on it or whatnot. Here's the deal: there was no wait. Like I rode it twice. And I just walked on both times. Yeah, it's a very, very cool experience because it mimics what it's like to be in, Rockefeller Center, and the seats inside the ride actually look like the seats inside the theater of the Tonight Show. And if you're a fan of the show, you will like it. It's a 3D motion ride, a lot like the other ones are, but it was actually like I was going in with very, very low expectations, so it kind of like blew the roof off of it, because I didn't think it was going to be very good. I actually ended up thinking it was great. But I'll agree with you, the Fast and the Furious ride is hot garbage.
All right, so it's Madden, and now it's time for my review of Universal Studios.
We're going to record that later. Get out of here.
And
we're actually physically recording something right now.
I'm totally leaving this in the YouTube video, though.
You planned it out. And I thought,
get out of here.
Well, good night, then.
Oh my gosh, he's been listening in this whole time, hasn't he?
He's been sitting at the door listening, probably.
Can I sit at the blue couch?
Yes, you can sit in. We're almost done.
So real quick, Kevin. So I posted a question on Reddit, in the Universal Studios subreddit, and the question was, what ride at Universal should get updated or removed? Because we've been talking about which ride we didn't like, and I think we talked about the ones we didn't like. They should really, do something about it. So I posted that question in the Universal Studios subreddit, and here's some of the responses that we got. That some of them were really good, and it doesn't surprise me, but a lot of them agreed on which ones should just get like flat out removed or get rid of. So somebody suggested Sofu Blue, this was his son's idea or her son's idea. I'm not sure gender here, but they suggested converting Fast and Furious into a night bus ride, which I think would actually be really cool. The night bus ride from Harry Potter, right?
Yeah, it's in the right spot for that too.
Yeah. Oh, it would be great for it. So let's see here. Captain Redfish said, remove Fast and Furious. I could go at length about how terrible it is, from the completely confusing action to the nonsensical plot of the completely boring everything else. Update ET. It's a great ride and needs some updated effects and lighting. So that's not a bad idea. As long as they kept the heart and soul of the ride. Exactly. Yeah. Let's see here. Gonturon said all the 1990s Marvel stuff is painfully outdated, which I would agree.
No, boo. I like that stuff.
I mean, I like it too, but I mean, it is outdated. Like, especially the Spider-Man ride. It's definitely outdated.
The Spider-Man queue needs to be updated. And I honestly don't think that would be that hard to like redo like the video that goes along with the ride, or like have several options, like the way that Star Tours works. Like I wouldn't be mad at them for that. But like it's very obvious that the rest of the stuff was existing rides, like the Storm ride there is the teacup ride.
Right.
And Dr. Doom's Fearfall is just a tower drop ride that you could ride at almost any theme park.
Right.
The Hulk coaster is cool, but it's not a story coaster like some of the more modern ones are. So yeah, there it does have its knocks, but I love the theming of that land. I wouldn't like if they ever decide to tear down some of those like those enormous murals of Marvel characters. Mm-hmm. I would be one of the first ones to bid on one, so I could have. I'd take that Rogue and have it like just
of course
here in my office. Yeah, of course I would.
Well, and I think this person wasn't suggesting getting rid of it. I think they're just saying update it from the 1990s to something more modern.
I can agree with that. I don't want to. I honestly, that Marvel is owned by their biggest competitor now, so it's a very kind of like sticky situation. I don't know how much it would cost to revamp that whole land to something else,
right?
And the way that the park works is everything is in a circle. So if they had to close everything to remodel that, but you still have to walk through it in order to get to other parts of the park, that to me is a logistical nightmare. To me, I'm like, yeah, I'll pay your licensing fee, Marvel, just to keep it, because that's easier than the headache that it would take to redo it.
Right. Paul said,
Paul.
Yes, Paul. So that's this person's username. Says it is time for Simpsons to get either a major overhaul or be replaced entirely, which I agree. I thought that when the land got updated, adding the various restaurants and the flat ride, the Simpsons ride was going to get a great facelift, but it never happened. I really dislike the animation style of the ride, and for a property that I love so much, I always skip this one when I'm there. And I agree, because when I go on it, I get so nauseous from watching it that I have to close my eyes, and it's terrible.
Yeah, the Simpsons ride, every time I've ridden it though, there's a ridiculously long and slow moving line for it.
Right.
And I've even had fast passes and it's either broken down or something has like really, really slowed it down. And that's another one that it belongs to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Like the intellectual property belongs to somebody else. I think the Simpsons land with like the themed restaurants, like being able to go to Krusty Burger or Moe's Tavern is flipping phenomenal.
Right.
But the ride itself, and it's got a big footprint. That building is huge.
Right.
But it does lack something. And once again, it's just another 3D like motion ride. So
right. Yeah.
I don't know.
I am Drew Baca said, in Universal Studios Fast and Furious, enough said.
Exactly.
Yes. And Islands, Dudley Do Right. Now hear me out, is what he says. Love the ride, but it's the only thing keeping the comic strip area alive. Retheme that and Bluto's and you'll be fine. So, okay.
The comic strip thing is a cool idea. Like it's very nostalgic, but it is one of the things, like, think about this. What do you know comic strips from?
Right.
It's from newspapers.
Right.
And what is nearly obsolete in this country now is newspapers.
Or physically papers. Yeah.
Physical papers. Yeah. So like, it's like one of those things that like the younger age kids don't know who those things are.
Right. Yeah. I had to introduce them all to Riley and tell them who they are and explain that. Yeah.
They don't. And you know what? There's not a Calvin and Hobbes ride there.
Right.
Like just disrespecting the greats. So
I know.
But I can see that. But once again, like it costs a fortune. That Dudley Do Right ride has so much theming. It would cost a fortune to refurb that.
Right.
And you'd probably have to close it for a year.
Right. And then the last person that I'll mention here is Master Pat. Said, in Islands of Adventure, Poseidon's Fury, I like the concept and it's unique, but the entire zone feels out of place and the size of it could be used for something else. And to be fair, like, this is me saying it now, not Master Pat, but I mean, to be fair, like, some of those, I think Poseidon's Fury has been shut down for such a long time. So
I don't think it's ever going to come back.
Yeah. So I agree. So
I guess I would have to go and watch a video online, because the 2 times that I've been, like, I don't think the first time I didn't know what it was. And the second time I had read enough that people are like, oh, it's terrible.
Right.
Avoid it. So,
right. So
yeah, I can see them, like, the place where the little land where Poseidon's Fury is at, I can see them retheming that area with something different a whole lot faster.
Right.
But they have Universal has what is the new thing that they've got building? What's it called? Do you remember?
The new building. Oh, the Epic Island.
Epic. Epic Adventure.
Yes, Epic Adventure. Yes.
So they've got that in the works. So their capital is already tied up with other building projects. I would imagine that the other 2 parks stay mostly unchanged for the next 3 to 5 years, because
they're investing in that right now.
They're investing in other places.
All right. So, well, thank you everybody who responded on Reddit. We really appreciate hearing everybody's thoughts. And
yeah, man,
we agree with a lot of it. And everybody had, like, really interesting ideas too. So we like it. And
it's great to be able to put something out there and get some responses for that. So definitely thank you guys for participating.
Yes, definitely.
All right. So we got to wrap this up. This has been a long episode. We had a lot to say about Universal.
Yep.
But 60 seconds, Sean, what's your big picture, your overall final thought?
I like Universal, and I think it's a really great place to go. But I would say that it's probably one of those things where it's great if you go on, like, a really short trip. I feel like if you're trying to make a whole week out of it, it's going to get redundant really quick, because again, you can do both those parks in one day if you plan it right. Now, when Epic opens up, that might be a different story. But as of right now, it's one of those things where I feel like, if you're doing a short trip, it's worth it. But if you're planning on being in the area for like 7 or 10 days or something like that, you might want to mix it up and go somewhere else too. So really great, but not something that I would spend a whole lot of time there and just hang out for more than 5 or 6 days. So,
and I kind of feel the same way. We're going back in September. I've already mentioned this. We're going back in September, and I like what they have there, and I'm excited to see if we have a better experience as far as, like, service and stuff, because of, like, the crowd capacity and whatnot.
Right.
I will say this. It was a lot more fun to do it with your best friend.
That's right.
So yeah, that's a recap of our separate but together trips to Universal Studios. We both had a really good time, and we look forward to being able to do that again sometime, and maybe to bring you guys some more content along these lines. We'll see. But that's going to wrap up another episode of The Captioned Life. We hope that you enjoyed listening. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button on whatever major podcast platform you listen to, and go ahead and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Captioned Life. If you like what we're doing, give us a shout out, tag us in your posts. For more info about us and all of our previous episodes, visit thecaptionedlife.com. Until next time, we'll see you at the movies.